If you're like me, you've been on a kick for retro gaming as of late, and my 40-year-old self has had a desire to be 15 again, and unfortunately, my wife is enabling me in my behaviors of trying to become a collector. I see this on Twitter and Facebook groups and various other sites that are asking the question, is DK Oldies worth it? In this video, I cover my very first experience with DK Oldies. We'll talk about the positives and the areas of opportunities in hopes of giving you the chance of making an informed decision on whether you'd like to be a DK Oldies customer or not. My fellow travelers, you were searching the internet and the TikToks and the YouTubes, and somehow that's brought you right here to the LZ. And I first want to give a disclaimer. I am not a DK hater. I have been a customer of theirs a couple of times here in the last couple of weeks. I've bought a Nintendo 64, or rather I was gifted a Nintendo 64 for Christmas from my wife. My favorite console ever. That might be a topic for another time. I'm sure you're writing in the comments now about how much you hate Nintendo's somehow worst console yet. And I know folks are firing up in the comments that they're a scam, or they're too expensive, or etc., etc. From my view, I think DK Oldies is a pretty wholesome business. They have an excellent social media game. They seem like their employees are happy, and, well, they're, I think, in the business of curating retro games with the purpose of, in good faith, hopefully fostering a good retro image for people who are in the search just like you and me. Sure, they may be overpriced, but I really wonder, are they paying their employees well? And are they getting benefits? And is it helping with the money that you're paying them, even if you think it's probably too much? Is it helping them to support a good business growth with a good employment opportunity and things like that? I think a lot of folks that comment stuff on that, you know, online and Facebook groups and things like that tend to not think that deep about it, right? There is a business aspect. So I think if that is true, of course, everything I just said a moment ago is pure conjecture. I don't know if their employees are happy or paid well or have benefits, but it seems like they're running a pretty good operation over there. But I did have a bit of a struggle with them that I wanted to talk about in today's video, and it's not an unhappy ending to kind of spoil it, but it is kind of a buyer beware type of thing. First off, my wife bought for me for Christmas, was a great Christmas gift, the Nintendo 64 from DK Oldies, which is, I believe, called the 2-player pack, which came with 2 controllers, and there was a couple of other things here and there that is not necessarily DK Oldies' fault, that we'll talk about too. But with that, it ended up being probably close to around a $300 purchase altogether, right? Because you've got the console, they give you an option to upgrade to, and this kind of sounds like an oxymoron to me, but to upgrade to original controllers for an extra $60, which is with that. Now, of course, you and I know back in the day, there was always that one type of controller that we had that we gave to our siblings or our guests while we took the better controllers, so probably not a bad strategy. But in that, they also say that Nintendo 64 controllers, the original controllers, have been 100% refurbished, cleaned, tested, and have tight thumbsticks. That says that directly on their website. And I'm saying that, I'm showing that screenshot right here. That's the disclaimer that they make. So when I got my Nintendo 64, I also got it with Star Fox as well. That came from DK Oldies as well. I got the 2 controllers. And first off, I got a regular gray one, which we'll talk more about here in a moment, and then sort of a black and white kind of Frankenstein. They called it on the invoice, it was a double bubbled controller. And so they're like, here, just have this other controller. Apparently, the Nintendo 64 Facebook group, or the super group there, tells me that that's kind of an exclusive controller to something Mario Kart-like or something like that. So they say that's apparently a good get. But I noticed right away, both controllers were both not fully clean, and just like advertised, they advertise tight thumbsticks on their website. Now, either I'm misunderstanding the meaning or the definition of tight thumbsticks, or I'm misunderstanding their definition of tight thumbsticks. Now, if you have ever been involved with the Nintendo 64 in the past, you know that the Nintendo 64 thumbstick, regardless of your complaints about the ergonomics of that controller, I happen to like that controller. It was my introduction to FPS on console with moving with the C buttons and using the stick for aiming and stuff. It definitely is probably top 5 for me, at least. Maybe top 3. I have more of a sentimental value with the Nintendo 64 that goes beyond the console itself. That's a childhood relationship thing, but I digress. Both of the thumbsticks, particularly the one on the gray controller, had about, I want to try to be conservative here, and I'm showing the video on that now on screen of me kind of touching around. I'm on this video, I am not giving it any pressure. I'm just lightly with my finger sort of moving the stick to show the kind of play. That has about a 30% dead zone to it. It's not very comfortable. It wiggles around. As you can see, I'm kind of shaking it here. It's not the best quality. So right there, that's strike 1 on this controller. And the other controller is like that, only not nearly, I don't want to say quite as bad. I want to say about 25% dead zone. Now, I know control sticks typically have a habit of having a little bit of jostle in them, right? That's fine, like 5% maybe. But as you know, if you've ever been a fan of the Nintendo 64, if you played one back in the day, you will know that over time, about 6 months to a year with some pretty aggressive use, right? If you're playing a lot of Mario Kart and GoldenEye and Perfect Dark and things like that, you know that at some point those control sticks turn to paste. They turn to dust right there in your hand, and at some point you're finding yourself with a growing dead zone, a weird amount of gray dust in the housing of the control stick. It's quite something, right? Let's put it out there. They're not the best control stick. They were some of the first control sticks, but it definitely left a room for an opportunity. And these controllers look like they already have a good amount of wear and tear on them. So strike 1, the control sticks are not my definition of tight, and I would recommend, or at least suggest, that I'm trying to work with the objective meaning of tight here. When 30% of the movement of that stick is, even if let's say I'm being conservative and saying 25, even 25% of a dead zone is not very good. It is not, and I would even say, if they didn't charge a premium price for these controllers, which is I'm assuming an extra $30 a piece, instead of giving you some kind of third-party off-brand trash, which I think is probably the other option. It's an interesting business position there for sure. It seems to be effective. But second, the gray controller in particular, the A button sticks, and the B button to a degree as well, or rather, past tense, did stick. And that was very interesting to me because in the website they say they test it, they are cleaned and refurbed. Now, it doesn't really go into any deeper than that. It just says those words. I probably could look on the warranty on the site and try to get exactly what that means. But DK Oldies does offer a 120-day warranty on their products, which is pretty sizable. The local mom and pop shop down the road gives me 14 days. So, that's 120 days versus 14. That's quite sizable there. That's a lot of time for you to get your use in and have things go wrong. So I opened up the controller because I had to see why I just spent an extra $30 to $60. Let's just say 30 for this one controller. That they told was, tight sticks, clean. And I come to find out, and I don't have any footage of here because I got really aggressively exploratory after work and decided to do this. And so I didn't think to capture any footage of it. But I opened the controller. I noticed as soon as I could get the B button and the A button out of their sort of silo that they're sitting in, both the B button and the silos that they were sitting in were caked with a sort of like dark cola, right? I kind of picture somebody had spilled their coffee or their Dr. Pepper or their Pib or whatever, but it looked like it was kind of like a tar type substance, right? And it sat there. So either A, DK Oldies does not make the true effort to test these consoles like they said. B, they tested it and thought that two buttons that don't even close to click, and the A button just straight up sticks. It feels like it doesn't even feel spongy at that point. It feels like there's literally something stuck in there, which is why I took it upon myself to open it up and see what was going on. Both the buttons, the B button less so, the A button was horrific, but the B button, both the A button and the B button, both were just nasty. So I had to get in there, I had to separate the controller halves, I had to get in there with like a Clorox wipe and really, with like a screwdriver, just get in there in those silos and just scrub them. The Clorox wipe was like a brown color, at least half of it, by the time I was done. It was disgusting. So they tested this, or they didn't, or they tested it and thought it was fine. They say they clean these. Maybe they do this just on the outside. Somebody had to have touched that. If they truly test these, they would have had to touch this, played with those buttons, and tested it, and either A, didn't know or didn't care, or didn't recognize it. Now, I'm not trying to blast DK Oldies here. I imagine they're getting a metric ton of stuff on a daily basis, right, that they have to work. They have several employees that I can see from their social media presence. But it's pretty much strike two for me, right, at this point for this controller. The stick it isn't what they imply and what my definition of a tight stick is, right? When I think about buying a new controller back in 1998, I think it should be that tight, or at least, it's been 25 years. I would have thought that they had replaced their stick. In one of their videos that I saw here pretty recently, as a matter of fact, Joey, who is the owner, the guy that you see in all of their TikToks and Facebook videos and YouTube shorts, is sort of walking through, and I'll include this video in the description there, where he's sort of training a new guy on how to clean and refurbish these controllers, particularly the Nintendo 64. And at the very end of the video, they sort of scream about how clean the controller is and the new stick that they just put in and how tight it is. And he's flicking the stick, right? He's grabbing it, moving it to the outside and letting it go, and it is flinging to the fully erect position. My apologies for any children watching and hearing me utter the words fully erect in context.
I'll take a glance over it and see how things look.
How'd I do?
Beautiful. Got the dirt out from those grooves. That nice fresh thumbstick we put in, cleaned out around the directional pad up top. And all the grooves around the side and the back as well. You did it, Cheston. You brought it back.
I more mean the full upright position that you would expect a tight stick to be. So I'm really wondering, do they have a consistent approach on these? And do they do that with all of their controllers? Because, and it gets worse, we're just talking about this one controller. The other controller, the finger quotes double bubble controller, its stick was loose, but it wasn't nearly as dirty, and it's not as quite as bad as the main controller that I'm complaining about. So now we get to addressing this, right? Now, if I hadn't paid a premium extra price to have these original controllers, I wouldn't have thought much of it. I would have probably done what a lot of folks who are Nintendo enthusiasts would have done, which is search online for stick replacements and things like that. I have original N64 controllers here that I got from them. I'm happy that I have that, right? Some of those old knockoffs don't even have really like the Nintendo logo on them. They don't have the seal of approval, right? I think they're great. I contact DK Oldies, and here's one thing I got to say. Apart from them seeming like a wholesome business for me, and they kind of give this impression their employees are happy. That stuff matters to me, right? You've heard me talk about my experience with employment and my sort of pro-employee stance for the games industry in general, right? So it kind of looks like they have that sort of down pat. I contacted them at the number that they provide on the invoice that comes with your items, right? And they say, hey, before you blast us on social media, please give us a call, right? I think that's fair. I think it's fair that a company asks you to do that, right? Hey, let's give us a chance to make it right. We got this warranty and all these things. I do think that's okay, right? I think it's fair to give a company a chance to write something that maybe they didn't intend to mess up, or maybe there's some confusion. Maybe I did this wrong. A good customer does that, and I've worked in customer service for decades now, and I too appreciate having that opportunity, right, to be given a fair chance to try to fix without a bunch of anger and rage on social media. That's fine. I call them, and I didn't even wait that long on hold. It tells you that I was the third person in line. It was about I think about a 10-minute wait entire. And I got somebody unsure here. So the customer service that I talked to sounded like they were pretty close to, if not in the same building, they were in America, right? So they were here. They understood. They were listening. They showed empathy. I explained to them that sort of what I just explained. And the gentleman that I spoke to, he was curious. I even held up the controller to the earpiece of the phone I was talking into, and he could hear the rattling of the controller. Right, it's kind of like this. I don't know if you can hear that in the microphone, but I've got the control stick housing out of the controller, and that was just me shaking it around. It was. He's like, "Wow, that does sound loose. I don't think it should sound like that." And he heard that for both controllers. I want to put a pin in that and have you remember that, because he heard that for both controllers. So he said, and then of course I told him I had to clean one of the controllers that were just plain disgusting on the inside. I'm surprised this thing didn't have Mr. Pibb all the way in the inside of it. I don't know what was spilled in this thing, and I'm kind of afraid to investigate on what it was. He gave me a $5 credit on my account for the fact that I had to clean, right? That's fair. I think it was great for some kind of compensation. I think that maybe they could have gone the distance and just credited for the entirety of the controller, considering they didn't keep their word on that. But I'm not going to complain because I didn't get nothing, right? That's fair. And then what he asked me to do was that he told me he was going to send me 2 replacement controllers, and then I had to return the other ones, which, okay, that seems like a lot, right? Especially since, if you have sort of extra sticks sitting around, and I did suggest this to them. I said, hey, listen, I think it might just be better that you just send me 2 sticks, right? I can fix this right here. I can swap the sticks out. And he said, well, we don't really do that. We kind of keep them in case we need them to do repairs and things like that. So the company seemed like it was just willing to go and pay shipping to send 2 full controllers out instead of just 2 stick housings where they could have just easily replaced easily replaced the other ones, and I could have fixed that. I would have accepted that, no problem. He seemed like a nice guy, very well. I wasn't ridiculous to him. I wasn't yelling, screaming. I don't do that. Again, I worked in customer service for decades. I know what it's like to get that person on the phone, and it doesn't get you very far. I know that for sure, to scream at somebody over the phone. He was very well. He did a great job. 3 days later, I received a package from DK Oldies, and there was just 1 controller in the pack with a return label. A sort of pre-printed return label for me to use to send it back. Not 2, like this person had told me they were going to do. So I had to get back on the phone with them again. Funny enough, and I think this was like 3 or 4 days later, I got the same guy. How often is that you get to say that happens when you have to call customer service for literally anything, that you get not only somebody that kind of has an understanding of the problem already, but is literally the same person. And actually, even more to their credit, they remembered me when I talked to them. He was like, oh yeah, I remember you were the guy that shook your controller in the phone and you could hear the shaking, and that was kind of a good clue for me to replace them, right? So he got right on it. He said, I'll send you another stick. I will send it in a box this time. The 1 stick that arrived that day was in sort of like a packing envelope, so there was no way that it just was not big enough for me to fit 2 controllers. So he sent it with a box that arrived today, and it also had a controller. So let me talk about these replacement controllers real quick. They had pretty much the same problem. The third controller that I got, the first replacement, was actually dirtier on the outside than the first controller that I got. Where the 2 plastic halves go together for the controller, that was caked with nastiness on that controller. It was like they didn't really touch it at all. The 4th controller that I got today was a little more clean, but there are places that I can look on and identify that is clearly there wasn't any attention given. On the back of the controller, if you've held a controller for a while and you kind of start to see a line of like dead skin from your hand, that you get like sweaty hands. And I'm obviously not trying to gross you out or anything, but it has a little bit of that on it, and by the A and B button, it looks like somebody, again, like dripped their coffee onto it, and there's just like these sort of dried circles where some kind of substance had fallen onto the controller and dried. I think again this speaks to all 4 controllers that I've gotten from DK Oldies so far have had some kind of looseness to the sticks. They're to varying degrees. The first one that I got just is an unacceptable level to me. And then the subsequent controllers that I got were either A, dirty, and or B, had a stick that I would not define as a tight control. And so it's pretty much just strike 3 for me on the controllers, right? Now, the console itself, I haven't really talked to about yet. It looks great. It runs great. The flow of nostalgia that I got is just so amazing to turn on a Nintendo 64. There's like no operating system to it. It just turns on, it turns off. It doesn't demand that you shut it down before you turn it off. Like a lot of modern consoles do. It does what it does. You turn it on, it fires up, your game works, and then it's a cartridge game that loads up mostly fast, and it takes me back, right? And so I've yet to get I'm going to send back 2 controllers like they asked, obviously. But this is kind of one of those things there where now we have to get into the final piece here. Is it worth it to go through there? And based on my one experience, right? I get this question a lot. I've seen this question a lot. And largely, I am a defender of DK Oldies as a concept, right? That, there are people who are crying about price. They're too expensive without asking the question or talking about the details of why they might be pricier than your local mom and pops or other places online, right? If they have a good business sort of offering where they give benefits to their employees and it's a happy place and they're paid great and things like that, and that's what goes into that cost, and I don't see a problem in that. Most mom and pop shops, like the one I got locally, there's just one dude in there. No other customers. I went in there the other day and I bought San Francisco Rush 2 and it was one other game, Perfect Dark. It's just one dude in there like, hey, what's up? And I was like, I want these things. He's like, okay, they're over there. I spent literally 90 seconds in there, and the price was decent. But it comes down to, I don't have a problem with the price. I have a problem when somebody pitches value to me, and it comes with value, or there's a value proposition to go along with the thing I'm buying, right? There's the value-added services. There's the benefits that come along with it. And so far, the only benefit that they've kind of held true to so far is the 120-day warranty, which is great. I don't know how you would mess that up necessarily. The games that I got, I've gotten 2 games of them. I got Star Fox and Turok 2, which whoever owns the Turok IP at this point, why have you not made another game yet? Let's get onto it. I digress again. Those are clean. They work great. I didn't really look on the inside too much for them, but they claim that they get in there on the chips and they hit them with isopropyl alcohol and all that stuff. Okay, fine. But if you're charging a premium price that is more than what most folks will charge, the Nintendo 64, I think altogether ended up being like $260, and then I think it was like $45 for Star Fox or something like that. This was a $300. I mean, that's 2/3 the cost almost of a PS5. That's big money for nostalgia, right? But then if I want to pay that and I find value in that and I've got that kind of money, nobody should really tell you that you should or shouldn't either. I do think it's fair that if somebody says, hey, you can get it cheaper elsewhere. Here's a place you can go. There's a place you can go. And you should definitely pay attention to that. But if you want to support a good, wholesome business like DK Oldies, it seems like a good business environment for its employees and for its general business. It doesn't seem like a corporation necessarily, but just a nice local business out of Pennsylvania that's doing their thing, and they just charge a premium because they feel like that's the value that they have. But when you tell me what the value is, the expectation is that you deliver on the value, right? And so I know I'm focusing really hard on the control, but then I have to wonder, when we start talking about some of these other things, right? I try to look at expansion pack. An expansion pack through DK Oldies is $30 more than the local place that I got it a couple of days ago. $30 more. That is more than 50% of how much I got it for, which I think was $49, I believe. It was pretty cheap, right? It was pretty cheap in comparison. Matter of fact, that's the going rate online for that little device that has just 4 megabytes of extra extra memory that makes some games run better or worse with maybe a higher resolution, maybe, right? And some games won't run at all without it. Retro gaming is an expensive adventure to go on, right? One that I'm probably going to have to pace myself on because I do want to collect some of my favorite consoles from the old days, like the Dreamcast, right? A console that was way ahead of its time, Super Nintendo and Genesis and those things. But from my first experience with DK Oldies, I don't really know that they met the value proposition that they were selling me from their website and their social media presence for the price that they were charging, right? We're talking an extra $60 for 2 original controllers instead of giving me the Mad Catz garbage that you would give to your friend you hate who's coming to play split screen with GoldenEye or something, right? On its face, I could see why they would do that. And when they tell me that here's the benefits that you get with that extra little bit of money, that is important. And many of those things weren't met. The sticks were not that great. I can't buy sticks from them. They weren't willing to send me sticks to rectify the situation, so they made me do extra work for them to send back 2 controllers now. Extra times I had to spend on the phone with them to let them know, hey, the first time I talked to you, you said you were going to do this. You didn't do that. I don't think it was that person's fault that I talked to. Whoever got the request from them sort of read it and held it to the side and tilted it and, looked at their bifocals or whatever, and they're like, okay, I get it, and then sent me 1 controller instead of 2. I feel like there's a sense of, 1, the 2 hands aren't talking to each other, and then 2, they aren't really doing exactly what they said that they would do when they sell you an original controller. And so, like I gave a disclaimer for earlier, it could be that maybe I'm misunderstanding. Maybe this is the way it's supposed to be. Maybe we're all just destined and doomed to have old garbage control sticks unless we go through alternative measures. There's several sites out there that I've been given. There are GameCube control sticks that you can put in and swap out. I bought one of those. It's great. It's a little problematic, not great for shooters, but it's the tightest stick I've ever held in my entire life. Hashtag that's what she said. And there it is, right? There are options, but that's beside the point, right? The point I'm making is when I buy from somebody, I expect them to hold to the promises that they make on that. And of course, give them good faith opportunity to make it right when they don't quite measure up. They kind of did that, but they kind of didn't. So, buyer beware. If you're going to spend a premium price for something, maybe spend a premium price, on more things locally, eBay. There's several sites online that you could go to. There's a great group over on Facebook. They're the Nintendo 64 Supergroup. They're a great group. They sell their own stuff. A lot of reputable sellers over there. Or just buy local, right? There's probably good local businesses around you that just have the stuff right there for you to grab, and that's that. My fellow travelers, I hope this was beneficial to you in your search and enablement of your retro gaming collection. I know you're just as curious as I am. I don't think this is a terrible spot on DK, but definitely something that you should buyer beware. If you're getting a Nintendo 64, probably any other controller from them, you might just be ready to replace it if you expect it to be a tight stick. And then you might want to get the wipes out and the isopropyl alcohol out and ready to clean it when you get it. And with that said, thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.